just having fun and conversation. 2 conversations on Facebook with some folks who are asking me about resting as awareness and pointing to awareness. And as a result of those conversations, I did an audio on Facebook. It was called Confessions of a Reformed, Repressed, Non-Dual Teacher, in which I was saying, I have difficulty sitting in this chair pointing to awareness, knowing how the pointing has encouraged bypassing. But as a joke, I said, I'm going to get on YouTube to these folks and say, I'm going to do it today. So I have to live up to my word now. But look, the way that I'm going to do it is not for you to follow along with in direct experience, because it's going to involve inquiry. And I'm going to point to places where you would inquire rather than just resting with something. I'll point to awareness, but then when those things occur, so I'm going to speak from my own experience and just talk. I'm not expecting you to follow along, because there's going to be some inquiry there that I'd be pointing you to do. But if you just listen. And close your eyes and just listen. Yeah, you can watch me if you want, but pointing to the fact that this is already here. Presence is already here. So how do we start to recognize that? And presence doesn't have a source. It doesn't have a place where it begins. But just for pointing purposes, if we imagine that awareness starts from behind the body and mind. And so that way, it's like the entire body and mind appears to awareness. Then you don't think of awareness as being in the head or in the mind, but awareness is that to which the mind comes and goes. And the mind here is words and pictures. So you might hear the voice in the mind say something. You just notice it from the awareness. Just let it be heard. Maybe it has a lot to say. Then you let it say that. Just resting and letting it. Just noticing a thought. And when you hear a thought or see it, awareness is on it, you could say. There's nothing else to do. It's just let it be as it is in awareness. Be just as interested in the falling away of a thought as you are anything else in this experience. So when you hear something, just resting and doing nothing with it. Resting as the non-locatable presence in which it's happening. And letting that thought be exactly as it is, those words, until you don't hear those words anymore in awareness, or you don't see them. It's like they naturally fall away, and you're interested in that because in the falling away of the thoughts, or any single set of words, notice that presence remains. And that's your experience as you notice essentially every thought, or any thought. Words, pictures. But see, right there, that's not pointing to our entire experience. So let me just branch off and say this. Because the mind is connected to the body, just means there's a Velcro effect. When we have certain thoughts that we believe or that feel true, it's because there's energy with them. So we have to point to that too. The feeling and sensations. The feelings and sensations that arise with words and pictures. So we start to be aware now that if there's a thought, a picture, some words, there might be some energy with it. It could be a picture of what you have to do later in the day, or something that happened earlier. Just letting it be there, and now noticing that it's not just thought. It's not just words or images. It's the energy with some of them, and energy matters. I want you to sit and notice that whether there's energy on something really does matter. So as you look at something that happened recently or something that might happen in the future, those thoughts as they come through, if there's any energy with those, just let the energy be as it is also. As you see or hear the thoughts that are connected to it. Because remember, we located awareness, so to speak, behind the body and mind, so even the sensations and emotions are appearing to that. So it's just a matter of noticing that that's already your experience. And then just notice that certain words or images don't really have energy on them. Because energy matters. Body matters. I just want you to pay attention to that. Just notice some thoughts come and go. And frankly, when we're sitting in a safe environment, this is one of my first objections to this, is when we're sitting in a safe environment, mom's not here, dad's not here, wife's not here, boss isn't here. The things that would bring up the trauma or the repression are not here. So we have to acknowledge that for a moment. Because if we sit here and point to what's happening right now, there's not going to maybe be much happening. So we just rest here for a moment. Maybe even anchoring to breath if there's a lot of activity still. Just anchoring to breath a little bit, noticing breath to come down and feel and continue to allow what's here while you watch the breath. And I want you just to notice that without mom here or dad or wife or boss, we can all come to some state of recognition of this, just being and letting things be as they are. Even if what's arising is uncomfortable, we can let that be as it is. Discomfort. Or even if something is painful, or if we're resisting, just notice the resistance and let that be. Not even trying to get rid of anything, just letting things be as they are. Noticing that they all happen within a presence that's borderless, and doesn't have any boundaries. There's no inside or outside to it. Now resting is that open, diffused, boundaryless presence for a moment, really noticing that that's at the foundation of everything. That is the foundation of everything, so to speak. Everything arises and falls within that seamlessly. Just sit here with me and notice that when a thought arises, it arises within and as the awareness itself. It's not separate from the awareness. It's appearing right there in awareness, inseparably from the awareness itself. In other words, you notice space around thoughts, and the thoughts are just right there in the space. It's almost like the space is just taking form. And then the forms are disappearing one at a time. And there's nothing that you have to do. Nothing. Just see. Rest and notice and allow. And see that you are this presence in which everything is happening. And that's wonderful. And I would begin pointing that way. And I'd come back to that if I were to do this again. I'd come back to that pointing. But I would also say this. I would look out at you all, or if we were in a circle, I would say, this is pretty safe, isn't it? I don't know any of you. I don't have any history with any of you. Do you guys know any of the rest of the people here? You don't know them either? We don't know each other, really. Not going to be a lot of triggers here. Not that we want triggers, but they're not going to be here, probably. So if we keep doing the first dimension, resting and pointing, it will be, actually, can be transformative when we really directly see what we are in this safe container. But then how, is that sustainable? Is the recognition sustainable if we are having the recognition only in the safe container? So what I might say in that satsang is, can we just make it a little bit less safe first? Because if we don't, the trauma and the repression that's hiding right now in the room will have its say when we leave. It'll come right up because it's protecting us. And that's actually what's creating the sense of separation in our lives and in our relationships, is that. And right now, in this container, this safe container, that's buried. Especially if I just sit here and point in first dimension and we don't really prompt any of that up, we stay safe in that way too. So we stay safe in the sense we're not going to go into the body and prompt any of that up. We don't know each other here, so we're not going to trigger each other, so it's not going to come up that way. We're not going to do any inquiry because it's first dimension. We're just pointing. Pretty safe. Is that sustainable? What if I sat with all of you for another 3 hours like this, and I could do that? Is just point to this. And some of you might deepen into that recognition. But see, what I'm doing is it's like, am I aware as a teacher here of what's going on? It becomes about my consciousness as much as yours. Am I aware of what's going on? So for example, as I look around the room, am I aware that the people looking at me, even the ones that are smiling or looking peaceful, that there could be rage behind that? And that this safe container will never bring it to the surface. And that those people then won't be met by this. Not really. Too safe. So I want to talk to those people. I want to say, do you want to do some inquiry? Can we go into second dimension here? In other words, as we're already resting as awareness, can we just prompt some things up? We don't even have to call it anything fancy. Can we just come down and each of you feel something? You notice how things come and go, right? Now notice that some things don't seem to come and go for you. Could that be where we're storing the trauma and repression that's going to come up when we leave? Yes, that's it. So can we feel into that now? An area in the so-called body where you're feeling contraction, pain, some woundedness, energy. Just let that be first. So there we are. We start in first dimension always. We're always there. Just let that be. Feel that. In fact, even say, as you're feeling it, thank you for arising. I love you. You're welcome to be there. Just start saying that to everything you're feeling. Just, I love you. You're welcome to be there. I love you. As I feel into you, you're welcome to be there. Because I need to put my money where my mouth is, right? If I'm resting and being with everything, then I need to start there. So that discomfort in my jaw, can I feel that? Can I let that be there? Excuse me. Can I let the cough be there? But can I also let the thing that's uncomfortable be there? Those sensations. Hold on, baby. You're okay. We have more dogs outside. 3 dogs in here. It's a long story. Can we just feel into that area? And now, instead of just resting in this very, very safe container of this meeting, can we bring up your wife, your husband, somebody close to you? When you just see them now. See, they weren't going to necessarily arise in the first dimension pointing, but here we can bring that person up now. Because that's important, isn't it? If you're experiencing separation, you're probably experiencing it right there. I want you to feel into that area while you're seeing your partner. And I just want you to say, who am I in this relationship? Or what deficiency story, if any, arises for me here in this relationship? And you're hearing something, and what I would say is, just like any first dimension pointing, I would say just let that be. Like whatever you're hearing right now, if it says I'm not good enough, just hear it. Immediately notice it and allow it. And notice any energy with it. And notice that it's already there and there's nothing you can do about it. So rest and let it be. Because any resistance to it would just be making it harder. In fact, if you are resisting what's there, can you allow the resistance? Can you let all that be? And now with second dimension, I would just ask you to look back at your partner as you're feeling into that area. Because you and I know that there's more there. Right? So you feel into that and you say the opposite now of your story, your identity. So if it's, I'm not good enough, I'm perfect as I am. Not as a positive affirmation, that's a bamboozle. But you feel it. You listen to the body as you see your partner and see if that area of the body produces something. When you say, I'm lovable, you feel that as if the body's disagreeing. Is it producing anything in the mind? Remember, because there's always a mind-body connection. Can you rest with what's coming up here as I say that, or as you say that? I'm lovable. Just rest with whatever comes. You want to see both the thoughts and the energy. You want them both to be there. Make that conscious. Let it all be. Notice that it's happening in the awareness. It's already here. See? You just rest as that awareness and let that be. In fact, let everything be, as you repeat a few times here, the opposite. Reverse inquiry. I'm lovable. Just let it, remember, you're feeling into an area where you're holding something. We'll talk about what's really being held there in a second. But for now, just be with what's coming up here. And just like a good non-dual teacher, I'm going to point to you to notice that it's all happening within what you are. And you're not a person. You're not a thought. You're not a feeling or a sensation, because you're awake to that. See? You see that thought. You see those thoughts. You feel that energy. That's registering to you. The awakeness. See? Letting everything be from that awakeness. I want you to notice, as you're watching and allowing, that things are kind of happening horizontally, one after the other. I am lovable. As you look at your partner, horizontally, one thing after the other, here it comes. You don't have to do anything. Now, just let it be. See it. There's nowhere to go. It's all right here. Just let it be. It's this story that makes you think there's somewhere to go. See, the story that you think that there's something wrong with you, but now you're awake to that. The presence is not going anywhere. It can't. It's just here and awake. Now, it may get quiet for some of you. If you get stuck somewhere, just do a little tapping. Just to kind of move things through for a moment. Notice the tapping if you need to. If you don't need to, don't use it. If you can just be with what's coming up, letting it all be, that's probably better. So now we get curious here. If I were pointing like a teacher would, I would say, okay, just notice that we looked at something there that wasn't arising for us when I was pointing in the beginning. Like we couldn't see that like the thought of your partner brings up a very old story for you from childhood probably as we were just resting here. So we're learning through seeing. We're gaining insight through inquiry. And the inquiry is giving us insight that we wouldn't otherwise have if we hadn't done that. Otherwise, we would have just rested here, and partner might not have come up in that way. And then we get up from these chairs and we go back to our partner, and guess what? The trauma and the repression. And this explains why so many of you have been to these kinds of meetings, and it's not sustainable because it doesn't go deep enough. So I'd say, let's go, because we're here. Let's do this. So we can sit here and do this all day. We can sit here and look for self and who you think you are. It's a great thing to do. I'm not going to do it all day, though. But if I were sitting with you all, I'd do it for a while so you could really see, again, the identities that you're bringing to relationship and all the stuff that you can't see when you're just sitting here being. But inevitably, it would turn to the stuff that matters. And I'll just say it this way, the stuff that matters is the stuff I think that creates the suffering out in the world when we're not in this safe container. What's that? The stuff that matters. That's the stuff that's not coming up here in this meeting. The stuff that matters, the stuff that's behind your triggers and your shadows and your disease and your chronic pain, if that stuff is emotional, then that's not arising here. And in fact, there may even be a cover-up job going on here as we have trauma responses, like we're smiling and we're looking peaceful, or we're trying to get the approval of others in the room, or where we don't want to speak up because we're repressing anger. So all that's been going on for as long as I've been sitting with you all. Can we talk about that? Because that's the stuff I think that's creating most of the suffering out there. And I can't point to that in the same way that I just pointed in that previously. Here, I'm going to ask you to, instead of becoming dependent on me, pointing for you, I'm going to show you some skills. And this is where I would get into the third dimension work. But the thing is, this is why Satsang doesn't really work for that. Because I can instruct you, and I do all the time in the members area, on how to process something from a trauma and repression perspective. Like understanding that the stuff that's the suffering out there in your life, in your relationships, in your health is the trauma and repression, and how to access that. But see, the key is now we have to leave the safe container. I have to instruct you, and we can do these tools here today, but if you don't know how to look, I can't go with you out into your life. And I know you might think, well, maybe there's an app that where I can facilitate you, but there's no way to do it because you have to now trust your own experience. I'm going to show you how to do it. And I'm going to give you some skills so that when you leave and the trigger happens, or the shadow, or your symptoms, that you know how to process that. Because we can't really do it here. We can do some here, and we will. And I would explain it to them. We would do it. It's much more than I want to say today here. But the whole point of the conversation would be to now correct the bypass around this whole thing, because this is so safe. So I would say to people, this awareness that we're pointing to, when you leave, make that your home. That is your home. See that that's your home. You're always at home. Rest as awareness and continue, like outside of this meeting. But more than that, I want to show you that once you see with these tools that those triggers out there and the pain or whatever else that is your trauma and repression, and that a lot of what we're doing here is actually just staying safe from that. That's part of the Satsang now. You have to point that out. That basically the stuff that's causing most of the suffering out there is not arising here until we bring it up with inquiry. And then even if we do it here, our partners aren't here. Our boss isn't here. Mom's not here. So it's kind of irrelevant until we get out there with them. So what I want to do is I want to show you how to do it. Teach you how to fish. And that's why, ladies and gentlemen, I have difficulty being just a non-dual teacher again, like sitting in a chair. Somebody asked me that. That's why I did this video. Because if I don't say the last part, it feels like, oh wow, we just really bamboozled ourselves. Congratulations. Like, that meeting was a bamboozle. Because the stuff that's really creating the suffering isn't going to arise here. We weren't doing anything to bring it up. And by the way, that's the stuff that's going to create suffering out there. We bamboozle ourselves here. And we did it also through our peacemaking and our smiling and our peaceful look that's hiding the rage and the terror and the hurt. All of that was missed here until we got to the trauma and repression at the end. So I think I need more time with people, is what it is. That's why we have the members areas. I need to, for people to park with me in this work. So the pointing, if you can think about it, Satsang becomes your life. It's not a space. It's not the members area. It's not a Zoom meeting. It's not Satsang or a space anywhere. It is your life. And you sit at the hub of your life. And as you become skilled, your whole life is that's the Satsang. That's it. And the pointing and the inquiry happens within that constantly. And it just opens up this world. Because when we were in the safe container, we couldn't deal with all that. It was all kept out. But with inquiry, now you take that into your life. Your entire life is your spiritual practice. You're waking up in the midst of all your relationships and embodying that awakening. Because you're dealing with the energetic aspect, the trauma and the repression that's hiding in the body, and it's only showing itself in relationship. See, that's a Satsang that's like limitless. That's your whole life is this. So that's the message that I have. It's too limiting to sit in a space with you and pretend like we're going to have deep, deep embodied transformations in that space. It's not sustainable. We need skill. We need a good context to help us with the bypass, and we need real skills that we can bring into our relationship in real time when these things are happening. They get to the actual root of the thing, the trauma and the repression. This isn't be here now. This isn't like you're not your thoughts. Because, and I'll say this before I go, this whole thing about rest and just see that you're not your thoughts, that's just an initial seeing. And it's the embodiment that really matters, because the body is what's, again, keeping the score and all that stuff out there. So when we sit in a safe container like this, and we just watch thoughts come and go, it's good because it helps us see that we're not that. But then we have to go deeper, because The thoughts that are behind the triggers out there, the mind-body connection behind the repression and trauma out there is way, way buried and very, very powerful. So watching these surface thoughts and seeing that that's not you is not getting to that. And that's why this is not sustainable. This way of pointing, in my view. Satsang needs to be your entire life. You know, the point, if you can just imagine that, like, get out of the safe container, now life is, that's it. Welcome to Satsang. Welcome to meditation. Welcome. Wherever you go, you're in it. Because you're the awakeness. Always.